Hey, so tattoos are one of the seemingly many things in South Korea that exist in this kind of gray area or on the fringes of legality. So, having a tattoo or tattoos themselves are not illegal in South Korea, but they are legally defined as a medical procedure. So, they're illegal to get unless administered by anyone who is a medical doctor. So, you have to get one from a doctor in order for it to be legal. um, Given that I'm sure no doctors want to go through years and years of medical training to go into the presumably not very high paying field of tattoo artistry, whereas they could go into plastic surgery and make a hell of a lot more money, it's really unlikely, and I guess it would be odd and very expensive to get a tattoo from a doctor. So, according to the Korean Association of Tattooists, which exists apparently, over 1 million people in Korea have tattoos. So, people are getting them from somewhere. But in order to get a tattoo, you kind of need to go underground. So, not actually underground, not under the surface of the earth. There's not a subterranean species of mole people in Korea who dole out tattoos, as far as I'm aware. Um, what I do mean is that most tattooists operate out of office tels. So, office tels are one bedroom apartments, such as this one, where they tattoo artists, I guess, rent and turns into a studio. Essentially, you have to hear about a tattooist through word of mouth or the internet, Facebook, and you go into an apartment building, walk up to a door that has no discernible signage on it, and go inside, and that's where you get your tattoo. So it's a little off the books or on the down low. I've seen a few posters advertising tattooists, and there's actually a building that has a big sign that says tattoo on it near my apartment. So this nondescript method is not always the standard method, but I think tattoos seem to operate under the same legality as prostitution or pornography here. They're technically illegal, but a lot of people still do it or consume it. So the police, I've heard, will perform sporadic raids on tattoo parlors or fine business owners intermittently. But that being said, a few shops in Seoul, particularly, have started setting up neon signage outside of their businesses to indicate that that's the location of their businesses. So I guess the times are changing a little bit. That being said, applying to the public school system as a foreigner, you have to disclose whether or not you have a tattoo, the size, location, and design of that tattoo to your potential future employers. I've heard that having a tattoo does not really disqualify you from getting a job, but I'm not sure how true that is. That being said, unlike the only other country in the world who has made tattoos illegal, Japan, you will not be barred from going into a bathhouse or jjimjilbang in Korea for having a tattoo. Whereas if you go to Japan with a tattoo and go into an onsen or bathhouse, you will be promptly kicked out for having a tattoo, from what I've heard. Not confirmed. So the reason for this is because both countries, both Japan and Korea, associate having tattoos with gangster subculture. So usually people who have tattoos belong to the Yakuza in Japan, or I'm not really sure what the name of the Korean mafia is. That being said, so the two countries associate gangsters with tattoos, much like, I guess, my grandparents do. And this seems to be typically the view of the older generation in Korea. However, South Korean gangsters and Yakuza seem to be a little bit different from one another. This quote from Wikipedia is just too good not to include. So, in describing South Korean gangsters, they said, that the stereotypical image of the quintessential South Korean mafioso is one of the kaktugi hairstyle, which consists of the sides of the head shaved but hair remaining on top, a large build, dark black clothing, tacky suits, black painted luxury cars, prominent tattoos, and saturi, or regional accent or dialect. So aside from both the cars and the prominent tattoos, and as long as you consider Canadian to be a regional accent, this pretty accurately describes how I looked before I cut my hair. So I suppose it's a good thing I went from mafioso to skinhead. I guess I can't really win. No matter what I do with my hair, I guess I'm making some sort of a negative political statement. Always the bad guy. So, as I've said, this gangster connotation of tattoos is typically that of the older generation. The younger generation in Korea seems to be getting a lot of tattoos, and I think they associate them more with athletes and K-pop celebrities. So it's changing, I guess, as the older generation passes on. So the reason why I'm talking about this and why I find it so interesting is, I guess, South Korea's stance when it comes to body modification. When you hear body modification, typically I think most people think of gauged ears, stretched earlobes, long necks, stretched necks, full body tattoos, or those lip plates. I think people think of the most extreme examples, but included under the umbrella of body modification is plastic surgery. And it's quite clear, as I've stated in my previous videos, that plastic surgery is thought of quite favorably in Korea. So why is one form of body modding, I guess, encouraged on a social level, while the other is really strongly demonized and made illegal? I think that this is a really interesting dichotomy. Other than, I guess, the gangster connotations that I've mentioned already, I think there's one other reason for the prohibition of tattoos. Given the homogeneous standard of beauty in Korea, the aim of plastic surgery is to conform to a single idea of what beauty is, the double-eyelided, S-line, V-line princess, where the main purpose of tattooing, I believe, is usually to set yourself apart from others. So while you could argue that those people who are gangsters and getting tattoos to show that they belong to a gang are doing something, I guess, conformist, I think these people are showing that they are conforming to a counterculture rather than to the culture at large. So they're doing something individualist in getting a tattoo, or to stick out. Thus, I suppose plastic surgery is seen as beneficial in a collectivist society, whereas tattooing seems too individualistic, and thus is therefore prohibited. I know that to state that South Korea is collectivistic is overly simplified, but it does seem that the social cues, the social norms towards fitting in, not standing out, are stronger than the social cues or social norms or mores or folkways that encourage sticking out, being not just one of the crowd, but being an individual. I think it is too overly simplistic to say that Korea is simply collectivistic, but there are a lot more collectivist features to the culture as opposed to individualist features. And I know that this is not the only reason for its illegality, and that the views on tattooing are changing as the older generation dies. But I think that this explanation kind of adds an interesting twist to it. So those are just my thoughts on the matter. And as usual, thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.